one right here, that would be cut out and stolen.
When the value of the precious metals inside these catalytic converters went up drastically last year, so did thefts. But now one local scrap dealer tells us that value has gone down by about half.
The platinum, palladium, and rhodium is dropping very fast right now, actually. They're not worth near the money they used to be.
A law also went into effect on July 1st of last year, making it more difficult to sell the converters, hoping to reduce the theft.
You're not supposed to be able to sell them to a place unless you have proof where you got it.
But thefts are still happening. CPD says between July and September of last year, there were 125 stolen converters, and from October to January, there's been about 150.
There's a clarification that we need to get from Commerce and Insurance as to whether or not out-of-state buyers have to have the license. Because we're seeing a lot of out-of-state buyers coming into Tennessee and buying these stolen catalytic converters.
Senator Paul Bailey sponsored that law and says people are finding ways around the laws and says even he was a victim.
I have recently been the victim of 14 stolen catalytic converters out of an employee parking lot at my own business.
But local mechanic Michael DeLuca says people are taking matters into their own hands.
People have been doing their diligence and so forth, putting cages on them, marking them with their VIN numbers.
He says a stamp kit is easy to get for $15 and makes it easy to trace the converter back to the vehicle and deters thieves.
And you just hold it up to the catalytic converter, you tap it with a hammer, and it embeds that number.
Advocates for prisoners who are serving life sentences because of first-degree murder are pushing for an option for some offenders to get parole faster. Victims' families and one district attorney say it only causes loved ones more pain.
That's a slap in the face to parents.
Keisha Taylor lost her son to gun violence more than 10 years ago. She believes in second chances, but not when it comes to those convicted of taking a life.
Well, I have no remorse for reform at this point. No, ma'am. No, ma'am. My son was murdered during a senseless violent crime. I cannot accept it.
Her son, Antonio Quantrell Taylor, was murdered in his home while he was with his 5-month-old son.
You can't, I understand about reform, I do, but when you take a life from someone for no reason, you can't justify that. Some things are not justifiable.
We are not animals. Nobody was created to be caged.
This week, advocates for restorative justice pushed for a Tennessee bill that would reduce the amount of time someone convicted of first-degree murder is eligible for parole. But now, one of the original sponsors, State Representative Dan Howell from Cleveland, is pulling his support. He sent us a statement saying after consulting with district attorneys, judges, and victims, he doesn't think the victims of violent crimes will be best served by this legislation. Today, DA Steve Crump agreed, saying the proposal undermines the very basic nature of truth in sentencing.
It would create a situation where potentially every 4 or 5 years a murder victim's family would have to go through the process of fighting a parole attempt. I think it's just incredibly bad policy.
Reliving a tragedy Keisha knows all too well.
I will fight, I will speak, whatever it takes to let my son know that I will continue to speak for him.
This bill will not affect those who received a first-degree murder conviction and a sentence of life without parole or the death penalty.
Some may just know it as the massive chemical plant off I-75, but what you may not realize is Wacker, right here in Charleston, makes raw materials that have gone into some of the products used to help fight this pandemic. This fluffy white powder, known as HDK, goes into cosmetics, paints, toothpaste, and even things like masks and ventilators.
The likelihood is that you're using 15 different products that have Wacker materials in them every day. Wacker produced several products that supported the pandemic, all the way from hand sanitizers to the silicone tubing and things that went into ventilators, insulation that went around the vaccines that had to be shipped around in a very low temperature. So the fumed silica that went into both the silicone tubing and things for ventilators and the insulation that protected the vaccines in transportation were produced here in Charleston. Small, pieces of silicone metal.
The plant's main product, polysilicone, is sold to help make solar panels and semiconductor chips, which can be found in things like cars, phones, or even your computer. In fact, site manager Ken Collins says 50% of the world's semiconductor polysilicone is made at Wacker.
Since Friday, we've sold 1,500 boxes.
Across the board, demand for rapid tests in the Chattanooga area is at an all-time high.
Yesterday, I got in 540 boxes of tests, and we sold out of those probably about an hour ago.
A federal website launched yesterday is meant to help address testing troubles. This site already getting over 50 million visits since it launched.
And the sooner you get your order in, the quicker you will receive your test in the mail.
But it's also creating extra issues.
The Biden administration has been buying a lot of them up, so that makes it harder on us to get it from suppliers.
Everybody is out of stock. The wholesalers, our secondary suppliers, if you do find it, it's very expensive.
Across state lines in Hickson, Access Pharmacy does have a few of these at-home COVID tests available.
Jake Standiford says as demand has spiked, he's fielding questions from customers regularly. So what do you need to know before purchasing one of these? For starters,
they're very accurate. They're actually more accurate than some of the flu and strep tests that we have.
Just how accurate? 88 to 94% effective. But there still is a small chance of a false negative.
If you've been exposed and you're having all the symptoms and you get a negative test, you definitely need to test again the following day.
Generally speaking, you want to test 3 to 5 days after a potential exposure. And if you're symptomatic but unsure if you've been exposed, Dustin Beard says you should take a second test 48 hours later.
You may be spinning your wheels if you just go ahead and test immediately.
When self-administering, you'll also want to follow the directions carefully.
All of them are a little different as far as do you need to swab both nostrils? Do you need to swab it 5 times, 8 times?
As for cost, it varies, though our research shows at-home rapid tests in our area range between $12 and $30 for a single test.